Welcome to another episode of JLL's Perspectives podcast. Now, we don't like to gloat, but JLL has moved its Melbourne team into a new office this year. Why is this significant? Well, it's broadly acknowledged that this new office in the city's 101 Collins building, iconic as it is, represents the highest standards of corporate office space in Australia. And that is no mean feat, because offices kind of have to be everything these days, or everything to everyone. They've got to make workers want to leave home. They've got to inspire employees. They need to support a whole spectrum of working styles. They want to be sustainable on multiple levels, reflect and represent social and cultural diversity. And frankly, they've got to be worth all of the investment that you put into that. And honestly, this is something that landlords are grappling with so much these days. So JLL designed, built and delivered new Melbourne office. JLL collaborated and negotiated with our landlord to secure the office space. And we also undertook all the strategic work that feeds into the design. And as a global real estate services company, for sure, this is the stuff we do for clients daily. But the pressure to set a new benchmark for an office that will stand the test of time was huge. And here to attest to that fact, as well as talk us through all the important details of delivering an office of this calibre, are my guests today, Alana Hannaford, who led the workplace strategy. Hello, Alana.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good. Very well, thank you. And Jennifer Moore, who oversaw the office design. Hello, Jen.
Hi.
And I'm Rebecca Kent, the host of this podcast. So Jen and Alana, looking through LinkedIn, scrolling through my feed, it's been pretty evident that the Melbourne office has evoked some really strong feelings in employees and visitors, that they've so strong that they felt compelled, to share their reactions with their LinkedIn followers. Just as an example, one of them was quote unquote, imagine feeling so proud of where you work that you want to share it with the people you love the most. And I think there was a photo of the poster and his father in this post. And the rest of his post where new faces have been popping up around JLL's Melbourne office, wives, husbands, partners, kids, parents. The space and experience that our workplace teams have activated within it have created something our people feel connected to and inspired to be associated with, which is full of praise, that post. And then there was another post I spotted, which I thought was interesting. And the poster was saying, well, you know what's wild, quote unquote, a random thought, which you'll appreciate, despite the view at this office being amazing, I, without thinking, took a selfie facing inwards into the office since I was drawn to the work cafe and the people. My observation is that what is within the floor plan and its types of spaces eclipses views these days. And the view outside the Melbourne office is pretty phenomenal too. So high praise again for the Melbourne office. What are your sort of instant reaction to those?
Oh my gosh. I did actually see a couple of those posts as well. And for us as a design team, we worked so collaboratively on this as the whole team. It was just validating that we'd created a space that was warm, inviting, let people come in. I've seen people bring their families in.
Yeah,
Have you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just that whole, connection piece. So we've really managed that as a first point.
And I feel really proud. It's not every day you get to work on an office for your own team. And it is one of those wonderful things that the profile of the people, the business we're designing for, but the pressure is on.
Yeah.
And to be able to see and hear people's stories and share that, it creates that wonderful sense of belonging for us. And the whole team who worked on this are just so proud of the outcome. And I think that's the best part of it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed seeing those posts and they pop up as well. It's just, it's awesome.
And it must have been an enormous amount of work. So validation, Jen, as you say, but surely a level of relief as well.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, the design team that worked on this project, the hours that they put in, I think Catherine and Francis and Emma, Elliot, everyone was on site so much towards the end, working with our site team as well, which was really cohesive. Sean was on site as well. It was all just came together at the end, and it was just so lovely to have that. It was a connection piece internally while it was happening, and also has been a connection piece externally as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So the office has been described as deeply Melbourne. I've seen that been bandied about. What does that even mean?
Well, it's funny, early on when we developed the strategy, we explored this notion of what is Melbourne. And we looked at the urban fabric, the culture, but we also looked at our people and our business. And when we selected to stay in 101 Collins, the design team did this wonderful narrative piece on what does it mean to be between the Paris end of Collins Street, but also Flinders Lane with the rag trade. And I think the epitome of coffee and arts and culture and the story of the location is really woven through the design to create what feels like a Melbourne office. And we've heard that from our colleagues in other states who have come to visit, that they've said this really feels like Melbourne. And it is, from the artwork selection and the curation of the art to the coffee and the culture. It's almost a subculture that's being created in the office.
Yeah, it was that really, I think what was really important for the project was that very deep research narrative at the start about, we wanted to stay in 101. What did that look like? Why was that the case? How can we bring that into the fit out itself? So our local context, like you said, with the Paris end of Collins Street and the playful Flinders Lane, that came into the narrative, the Flinders Lane rag trade. So we brought that weaving narrative through the whole space. So having something that's very Melbourne intrinsically makes everyone feel part of the space, and there's a story and a narrative around it. It's a reason for everything.
And interestingly, anecdotal story that I love is that we've named our back of house meeting rooms as the buildings that still are out the back door in Flinders Lane. And a number of staff members have come forward to say, my grandmother worked there, or my grandparents ran that business. And we've seen photos from those the businesses, and it's just, again, that lovely story of our position here in the market, not only for the business we do, but also the story that we contribute to in the Melbourne landscape.
You turn up to work today and there's a family connection, actually, like quite literally, which is pretty amazing. So another interesting aspect of the building is the office design is the focus on neurodivergence, which I think is really emerging as a big sort of area of focus for many new office designs. Well, I mean, I've spoken to colleagues even overseas in the UK who are seeing this as a trend. I mean, you say trend, you think it denotes something that starts and then is going to stop at some point. But it sounds like this is sort of a new it's going to become a new normal. What was the driver of that in our new office, the neurodivergence aspect? And just explain, what do neurodivergent spaces look and feel like?
First and foremost, we wanted a workplace where everybody felt like they could bring their whole self to work. And I think Dee and I, in all facets, were explored as to how we can really, deliver a workplace that truly empowers people to come and be themselves. Yeah. And when we first did our HX survey, we saw that there is a large portion of our population who identify as neurodiverse. And it was important for us to start to consider from an accessibility perspective, from an inclusion perspective, and from a productivity perspective, how can we create a workplace that really enables people? And so from when we looked at the profiling, not of just people who are neurodiverse, but of all of our workforce, people need quiet retreat. People need to be able to have spaces to engage in collaboration, but also engage in quiet time or just, not have the sensory overload.
Just separate.
Yeah. So we've gone through a range of elements of the workplace.
I think one of the most successful pieces has been our library space. We've had clients come in to specifically see the library, which is quite interesting. And it's not anything that we have. It's a destination point, I guess is what I'm saying, within the floor plate. So it's somewhere where you can go and retreat. The acoustics are lower. The desks are a little bit smaller, and you just feel a little bit cocooned in there. And it's been so successful for that very reason. And yeah, I just think it's been, I don't think I realized how successful it would be until we've been in the space and using it and seeing how it's being used, which was our intention, which is great. But how successful it's actually been.
And on the work floor, we've also placed pods, so focus pods. So with the library being a destination, that's great. But we also wanted people to feel like they could sit close to their teams, but have that sense of choice around their team neighbourhoods. And those focus pods have lower levels of lighting. They have greater sound attenuation around them. So it just gives, again, that sense of, I can either sit with my team in the open space, but also sit with my team in one of those focus pods and feel empowered. And the final part also for us it was around wellness spaces. We've got 3 dedicated wellness spaces, and we've got our parent and first aid room. We've also got a multi-faith room, but we've also included the Oasis, which is a space that, again, acoustic and light.
Furniture selections, lamps. It's just a space to retreat to. It allows people to, if you just need a moment, you go in. It's not like a first aid room. It's just an oasis. It's a little space for respite. And that has also been very popular and something that, again, just provides that level of wellness.
So it sounds, you talk about the library and the focus pods and the Oasis. Presumably the flip side of that is that there are places where, people are having conversations over the desk. And they're sort of bumping into each other and, they're having sort of, confabs as they pass each other. Can you give us a sense, maybe just help us visualize the whole office? Give us a walkthrough.
What we've really managed to achieve, particularly like that front of house area where there's that buzz and connectivity, if you think of that warm hospitality vibe, so it's like you're going into a cafe or your favorite restaurant or something, but you're there with your colleagues or your friends, and it's that bump factor and that whole piece in that front of house. It's just so lively. There's the stair there that connects you to downstairs as well, the warm timbers, the beautiful palette, which has just such a warm aesthetic with the timbers and the greys and the neutrals, but it's also got the maroons and stuff in it. So it's just a very autumn palette. But yeah.
And what's really interesting too, we densified our desk environment to create that sense of connection. But what we also did was for every 9 desks, there is a focus space to be able to move away from noise, to be able to have that empowerment to either keep noise in or keep noise out. And that's a really important part of creating a collaborative environment, but also empowering people in that space. So not only do we have the great social hub, we have the great cafe environment, we also have those desking spaces that not only influence collaboration, but also the work and the productivity piece that we need to achieve.
To do as well. We actually did something unique in 101 Collins as well for the planning of the space. So when we were actually going right back to the concept and working through the strategy and stuff, when we actually our design team looked at the planning of how we were going to lay out the actual space, we looked at where we sat on the Melbourne grid and we overlaid that on the footprint of 101 Collins, and then we rotated that grid 45 degrees and looked at these additional pockets of space that this gave us and the journey that this created around the space. So again, even the planning of the space came back to that narrative and that concept and that grid and where we were located. And it's just provided that really strong narrative in the space.
And I think it's also enabling hybrid work. So when people turn up different times of the week, different time, how many days that each person turns up, everyone's got a different set of needs. But visibility and connection is amplified. That need to be able to see people, to be able to bump into people.
Yeah.
And this beautiful diamond approach to the floor meant that we weren't creating unnecessary corridors. And I'm just so proud of the way that your team have been able to design.
They've done such an amazing job. It's meant that the beautiful natural light is given back to all of us who are working in the space. We were able to create these deeper pockets, because the floor plan's quite deep in some areas. So that deeper pocket of built environment to house these extra focus rooms, extra foam booths, extra meeting spaces, which everyone needs in this hybrid environment.
Absolutely.
And that was purely by, as you say, laying the Melbourne city grid on top of the office plan twisting it around a little bit. And then
and looking at and sketching how that flow would work through the space. And what's also interesting, those sketches and diagrams that Catherine and our team did, she actually then worked with the Indigenous artist for our custom piece in our front of house, which is called Coming Together. So the artist Lisa Wapp took those sketches, and that was also an influence for her screen printing piece of Coming Together in the space.
Right. Okay, it all sounds so connected in so many ways. That's really fascinating. Alana, you were talking about desk ratios and densities a little bit there. Tell us how we came to work out what was an ideal sort of ratio. And, because I think that's another thing that probably our clients and landlords are struggling, less so landlords, occupiers who are designing offices are struggling with at the moment. How many desks do you put in your office? Who's going to be in the office? How do you make sure they're going to be, the office is going to be busy, buzzing and full, and those desks are not going to go to waste, and the floor space is not going to go to waste? Maybe just give us a bit of an insight into how we did that.
And what's really important in this design piece was before we even put pen to paper, we had already worked through a range of scenarios around our head count, our occupancy, and our neighbourhood strategies to really start to test, if we've got 2 floors, how many desks need to be on both floors? How can we reset our neighbourhoods and cycle different teams in different ways? And made some really early decisions of that modelling. And I think that created a great success for the design. Each team in JLL is in the office a slightly different amount of time, and each team in JLL also has a different profile. And we really took the time to profile our teams to understand those nuances, and we created ratios or sharing ratios of those individual teams' profiles. Now, across the organisation, we have a set sharing ratio, but our neighbourhoods have been designed, and where we've placed our pin drops have been designed based on those profiles. And we've gone with a pin drop style of neighbourhood because we know our people need a gravitational pull to their team, but we didn't want to put hard boundaries around where are your seats and our seats. And so this pin drop neighbourhood allows people to find where their team are, perhaps also to find where another team is if they want to sit with the other team for the day. But that early planning really helped us set up for success. And even at the end of the design, we had 6 different scenarios of our team blocking strategy that we could do. Based on our internal relationships, based on our relationships with the spaces that we've designed. And I think, it's landed beautifully.
Landed really well. That just having that whole front end piece meant that when we actually tested it and began designing the space, it was so much easier because there was data and background, and we knew what we wanted to achieve before we put pen to paper.
And for our change management team, Sean, he said, it's so easy to tell the story with the richness of that, the data and where our neighbourhood strategy is. It was so company-wise to engage with our teams to know that this has happened, and the teams really appreciated the rigour that we've been through.
Well, this actually segues perfectly into my next question. There are so many pieces and people involved in creating an office like this. How long did it take, by the way? Like, what was the sort of period of time from conception to delivery?
Over
about a year. At first, we couldn't engage too deeply with the business because of the what am I trying to say? The sensitivity and the negotiations of who else was moving within the building. But that once we were able to, we had a steering committee that was really integral to being on board with the concept and where we were going and the strategy and how that was all working. And then we were very open, that committee was very open with the business and engaging with their teams. We had change champions who also engaged throughout.
And the structure of that change piece was really about role modelling from a leadership with a leadership team. And Sean did a wonderful job of engaging with our leadership team and then with the champion team. And so we really empowered individuals across the business to drive the messaging, to engage with their own teams and to own the change as well, which just saw some great outcomes.
Yeah.
So what I was going to ask around that is what did you know of what people wanted in a new office? That engagement, I imagine, is pretty crucial. At what point in the entire process do you engage people, and how much of the feedback do you actually take on? Surely there were things.
Absolutely, the whole way through. The more engagement, the better.
Yeah.
You know, we are designing this for the people.
And it has to be about them. This is why it was so important to have I can talk to the design concept, but it was so important to have a design concept that resonated with everyone, that made sense with the building and the location and our people, the people story woven into that narrative as well.
So we've had a number of, I guess, data collection points through surveying, through interviews, et cetera, early in the piece. But we also had moments of voting and engagement with our people. So early, the chair selection process,
that was an open engagement. Vote on your favourite chair, come in, try it.
Even the beer tax, what beer do we want on day one? We had a fantastic engagement piece there. And even through the expo, our naming conventions for our meeting rooms.
The meeting will come up with names.
Yeah, it's, the more we have the opportunity to have people buy into that process, the better it is.
There must have been some things that were pretty wild or outlandish suggested.
I think some of the room meeting names were a little bit out there, weren't they?
Go on into
The Melbourne nightclubs. So
Yeah. Like that.
That's not terrible.
That was pretty fun.
It's always bold ideas. I think your team had a bold idea about the business hub, and we really had
the business lounge.
Yeah, business lounge. A space that has no technology, presentation only, but no audio visual, because we wanted to design for purposeful presence. It was one of our key elements to say, well, if you're going to design a hybrid working environment, you have to attract people, sometimes through FOMO, sometimes through coffee, and sometimes through beer tips. But the business lounge is such a wonderful space now that's highly utilised and engaged with.
Yeah.
But I'll let you tell the story.
So it's a first for a JLL office, but really engaging with Alana and the strategy and that piece about purposeful presence. What did that mean? So in 101 Collins, we have the buttresses that stick out from the side of the floor plate. And instead of turning that into the boardroom or making that another meeting space, we thought it's something that we can give back to all of us to use. It's more flexible. So we have corporate lunches in there for clients. We have drinks in there, or it's just open during the day and you can get your coffee from the cafe next door, go in and have a coffee or a little client meeting in there. But it's a very flexible open space. And it's right on the beautiful views. It looks straight down onto Fitzroy Gardens and across the MCG. So it's really beautiful.
Funny, that's the truly Melbourne part we forgot to talk about. The views out to the sporting precinct. Yeah. It's another part of the Melbourne.
Yeah. So on our facade, there's actually only 2 meeting rooms of built environment on the entire facade for both levels, which is the boardroom and the little adjacent room to the boardroom, which we call the botanical room. So those are the only 2 meeting rooms, and that was also very purposeful to give as much natural light and space back to those of us that are working in the space every day.
We've come down lower in the building, but what it's done is give you that sense of connection to the parklands around more than we had.
Which taps into the wellness.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. So it's a 6-star, Green Star and Platinum wellness rated fit out. So there was a lot of work that everyone did around that as well. And through the build as well, so we should touch on that. We actually did build it. We have our builder's license. And that was, the site team was phenomenal in that wellness piece. There was a lot that they needed to build and how they built and everything. It was a very cohesive process, the ADSF as well.
Absolutely.
Just to go back to the view, how much can you see inside the MCG? What's happening?
Oh, not enough. No.
A little bit too far away.
But I'm pretty sure any fireworks that we have over Melbourne is going to be quite stunning, that's for sure.
And 2 meeting rooms, that's pretty lean. How?
Only 2 on the facade.
On the facade, yes.
On the facade. Okay, gotcha. So it just means if you have guests sort of coming in, they're the ones you'll grab first, presumably, because, you want to show off.
I think but I think too, the way we engage with our front of house has significantly changed, because we now welcome guests in and offer them a coffee, and they get to take the view in from the wonderful, in cafe space. and get to engage with our business in that more informal sense before you move to a room.
Yeah.
And the way that clients now come in, it's changed and it's wonderful. You bump into people and you're like, oh, I didn't know you were here. How are you?
And and our business is having more of those informal meetings in that front of house open cafe space. So there's booths in there, there's little chairs and tables. It has that cafe feel, and it's almost like it's taken meetings out of these front of house meeting rooms, and people are having that more informal relationship and discussion.
Nothing quite like a chat over the smell of coffee in the air, hey?
And the bars. And it's good.
Yeah. So tell me, each of you, about your 2 favourite spaces in the office and why. Well, maybe there are
hard to get to.
Well, maybe spaces that you consider a real breakthrough, for whatever reason. Maybe they were hard to get over the line, or they're just being used successfully, or surprised you maybe in the way it's been used.
I'm going to talk about 2 spaces from two different perspectives. But for me, the library is such a wonderful space, and the design of it is why it's wonderful. You step over the line of the carpet where the carpet changes. There's no doors on it. It's, you walk into the space and you instantly feel a sense of calm because of the acoustic treatment, because of the lighting. And the behaviour in there is to be quiet, and that's space for focus. And for me, and for many people in the team, I get to go in there, do a piece of focus work, I get to come back, and I get to enjoy being a part of the team. And that's really important for me to have productivity in the office. And I think everyone is just really enjoying that sense of choice. The other thing, and it's a really strange one, but I have a favourite chair in our breakout space.
Do you?
And the reason why I love this chair is because it invites somebody to come and sit next to me. And so often I struggle to fit lunch in sometimes, but when I do fit it in, I go and sit in that chair, and often someone will come and say, can I sit here? And it's somebody in a different team. I get to talk about someone's family or what they did on the weekend. And it's a wonderful space. And often I come up and say, oh, can I sit with you? And the chairs, they're facing the window. They're extremely comfortable. And it's just a wonderful moment in my day. And it's a moment that matters. Yeah. And so that chair is facilitating that for me.
And it sounds like you've created a very deliberate time, a deliberate space and time in your day to do that and invite conversation. That is nice.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't necessarily have a favourite place, but what I've really been enjoying is actually living in a space that you've designed, because oftentimes we're designing for clients or, and we have an idea and an intention of how those spaces would be used, but we don't actually get to see how they're being used and if they are being used the way we designed and intended them to. And this has been amazing because thankfully, everything is being used how we intended it and designed it. And it's hearing stories like this when people are having those incidental bumps or have their favourite chair, and that it just makes me so happy because I just love walking the floors and seeing who's using what and how things are being used. And yeah, that's been my favourite piece actually.
Absolutely. So it's now October, we're 4 months down. Yeah. 4 months down the track of when the office opened. Are there any interesting bits of data or insights that have merged in the way the office, has been used? Utilisation, I guess, especially is what I'm getting at, which is particularly what people like to know.
We are counting how many coffees are made on a day. And that's a really interesting data point, I think, because when we've had events or when we have a lot of clients in, can really start to see from the number of coffees, what's happening. We do have Verge Sense, which is a space data system. And we've at the end of the 3-month phase, we'll do a really big deep dive into the heat maps, some of those trends, the activation strategies that we've had, but also our neighbourhooding. So at the moment, we're still working through the data. We've got our survey out live at the moment as well. But I think what's fascinating is just seeing the peaks of occupancy when focus rooms are more used than meeting rooms, but also our front of house versus back of house. And so we are at the moment unpacking that data. There will be more to come on it. Yeah.
Any sneak previews? Tell us how many copies
Right.
Oh, yeah. I think there's we're averaging about 500 a day of coffees, but then when we have an event or something, it can be up to 600 coffees for a day. And to the point that we've actually brought another barista on. So we have three during peak times. I mean, it is Melbourne.
That's a successful cafe.
Yeah, it is very.
And any insights as to how, the peaks and troughs in attendance through the week?
We are still seeing, I guess, a Tuesday to Thursday trend, and that's normal for across the industry. It is a reality for people in the way that they work, but different teams are different. We do see in our markets business a higher occupancy on Mondays. The activities that happen, and I think the teams are just leveling out their cadence still, and so we're seeing a shift in some of the team meeting operating rhythms to try and activate Fridays and Mondays a little bit more. And I think it'll still take a bit more time for us to level out. Yeah. But also for our JLL for JLL team, they've been doing some amazing activation activities. And I think that's a part of, again, understanding the utilisation and nudging some of the other times of the week where we're a little bit quieter.
Yeah. I mentioned it in the beginning in my intro that this office really sets a new benchmark for corporate offices in Australia. Was that too bold a claim? What's your opinion?
I say no. I think we have created a truly enabling, hybrid enabling workplace, I think. And we have many people coming in asking us for photos, asking us for advice, asking us for how does this work? But what we've been able to achieve is that sense of empowerment and choice for people, but also that sense of connection and belonging. And we didn't talk about this earlier, but we have different types of desks throughout the working environment. We have long stay desks, medium stay desks, short stay desks. It was another part of our design. And I think we've got all that right so far. If we grow and we push the workplace and work it a little bit harder, we might need to adjust it and evolve it. But from a day one perspective, I really do think that we've created a leading workplace.
Yeah. And so, Jen, you reckon it's going to stand the test of time? Like, it's a lot of investment, right? So you want it to be good for years to come.
I think it will. I think it will because we're very careful in designing something that actually resonated with who is going to work in this office. So it's the whole design concept was original to JLL, where we sit in the building, who we are as a business, who we are as people. I think if you do that deep research and dive into your company and come up with a concept that resonates with them, has the correct strategy for how they need to work, it will stand the test of time.
And also leveraging the building. We have a wonderful relationship with 101 Collins Street. And, the master plan that has been delivered as in the base building and throughout, we made sure that our story aligned to that story, but also a value proposition for our people. The wonderful studio downstairs and the end of trip facilities, the winter gardens and the cafe and the lobby, it all played into our decision making and all played into that story for our people. And the value proposition that we have here is just wonderful.
Yeah, amazing. Is there anything else I should ask you about the office or your experience in bringing it all together that we need to cover?
Look, I feel like we perhaps haven't done all the teams who are involved justice in this conversation. And, the technology, the ESS team, as we've talked about the site team, there is so many facets of JLL, even our leasing and our tenant representation teams. Everyone's been involved in this. So I think for me, I don't know that I can answer the questions, but I recommend for people to reach out to those teams and ask them about their experience through this project, because there's so many different lenses and so many different stories in bringing this to life.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was a truly one JLL project. And I think it's a great representation of what JLL can do.
Yeah, great shout. All right. Well, Alana Hannaford and Jennifer Moore, thank you so much for joining me on the Perspectives podcast. I hope this gives our listeners a bit of an insight into sort of what it takes to pull together a real sort of premium level office space. It seems to be going down exceptionally well. So that's good. I might do a LinkedIn survey on how many coffee people think that we're selling. It's not even selling, providing. We're providing every day. We'll see who's listening to this podcast. But that's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.